Good evening. And if you're just joining us, sorry about that. My buttons aren't working. You're listening to 105.3 FM out of Mississippi and 107.7 FM out of the beautiful city of New Orleans. And this is UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network. And this is the Angel Rock. I'm your host, Lorilei Potvin. I see you. Heidi Gall, welcome. Hopefully my voice will hold out, you guys. I'm sick again. Anyways, my name is Lorilei Potvin. I am also a host of a second show on the network here on Thursdays, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my good friend David Hansel with The Thing at the Foot of the Bed. A little bit about myself. I'm a Canadian psychic medium, crystal Reiki energy healer, Akashic Records practitioner, spiritual teacher and mentor. I'm a registered nurse, an animal communicator, well-versed in near-death experiences, having had one as a toddler myself and studied them professionally and personally for over 40 years. And I'm extremely well-versed in the paranormal. I always say I didn't go looking for the paranormal. It found me. And we've shared our story on the Travel Channel's Paranormal Survivor, Season 4, Episode 9. It's called Demonic Hauntings. You can find it on YouTube. I think you can find it on Netflix. You can find it all over the place. So, excuse me, guys. I'm going to try and not cough. If you guys want to watch us on TV, you can. The network does have a channel. It's on Roku. You're going to go to the channel store. I don't have a channel code for you, but how you can find it, you're going to go to the search button and type in UFO space P as in paranormal. And there's a drop-down list that'll come down. I think we're the third or fourth one down. You're looking for UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio, and that's how you can watch us. This network does broadcast to every country in the world, but 80% of our audience that listens live is audio only. I always say if you can't see us, you can't join in the conversation. And if you know about this show and The Thing at the Foot of the Bed, both of our shows are very audience participative. So how you can join in if you are listening live is, now there's quite a few things across the top here I'm going to read. So I've got my Facebook profile, Lorilei Potvin. I was able finally, crossed my fingers the last couple of weeks now to finally go back to UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio Network on Facebook. We're on Lorilei Potvin under the Angel Rock on LinkedIn, the Angel Rock with Lorilei Potvin on YouTube. We are also on the network's main YouTube channel now, which is UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. We are on Twitch, which is under UFO Paranormal and United Public Radio. We are streaming on Instagram. And just so you know, on Instagram, you guys, if it cuts off after an hour sometimes, just try popping into one of the YouTube channels. It's the easiest usually. We are also streaming on Sonya's profile under Sonya Roy, right, Sonya?
Yes.
And on your YouTube under the same name, right? Sonya Roy?
No, the YouTube is Redo Wellness. Redo Wellness.
Okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, got that. Sorry, you changed that. Sorry, I got it upside down. YouTube is Sonya Roy and Facebook is Redo Spiritual Wellness Center.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see the name. Sorry about that. What else do I want to say? Have I covered everything? I think I have. You guys stay tuned too, because after this, we still have more live programming. We've got Preston Dennett and Dolly Saffron with The Light Gate coming up at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So stay tuned for that. Give me one sec here. You guys know this guest of ours. She's on a couple times a year, and we're having her on tonight. Her name is Sonya Roy. And Sonya Roy is an extremely gifted bilingual Canadian medium. Master Holistic Healer, including she is a Master Reiki Healer and Shamanic Practitioner, as well as an author of numerous incredible books. Sonya was previously an RCMP officer. For those of you who might not know what that is, because she's a fellow Canadian, that's the Mounties, as you guys may call it. And she uses her life experiences and knowledge, as well as exceptional abilities, to help guide and teach others, to help people to empower them and recognize the divine self. Her latest book is called Narcissism, 12 Steps to Successfully Heal and Flourish After Narcissistic Abuse. And she's talked about that book many times on her show. Welcome. Glad to see you.
Oh.
I see. Here's the name now I see on Facebook. I'm going to highlight it so people can see it. So this is her Facebook name. Yeah, like she's at Redo Spiritual Wellness Center. We also have, because I'm going to go through the comments quickly here. Like I said, Heidi's here saying hi to both of us. And she said, much love from Boulder. We've got Julie Jean Bassett. I always give Julie Jean Bassett a shout out. She's been on the Angel Rock numerous times. She's a good friend of mine. She's an incredible animal communicator, both Earthside and when our pet, our beloved pets, I'll say, have passed over to the Rainbow Bridge. courage. And she has helped me with many of my own pets, I am telling you. So if you've got a pet that is doing crazy stuff, if you're at your wit's end, I am telling you, Julie is your person to contact. I've taken her animal communication course. She really can help, because many of us, right, we just either put up with some of the really troublesome behavior of our pets, or sometimes very sadly pets get rehomed. So if you're at that, especially, or you want to know what your pet is thinking or what your pet needs, maybe your pet needs some healing, reach out to Julie. She's also a shamanic practitioner. I've had a session with her as well. Julie is very life-changing about 6 months ago, maybe 7 now. So check her out at juliejeanbassett.com. Let's see, who else have we got here? Everybody pops in a little bit later because Sonia's seen our little countdown clock. And I said, no, people know. And we actually start at 10 minutes after the hour. But to try and explain this to guests, like you would understand because you've been over here before, but other people, I just tell my guests it's right on the hour, because all of us go right up to, we'll go right up to almost 8 o'clock. And then it gives the next show time to switch all their stuff over and get started. So people start filing in here, but they know I usually start a few minutes, usually after 10 after. So welcome. So we were talking and I said, what are we going to talk about tonight? And I guess when we had set this up months ago, you had put in your notes about the Akashic Records. So let's talk about that, because I was saying to you before we went live, I was on Father Sean's Paranormal Ministry, which is on Friday nights at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we were talking, and he's got a wonderful co-host, Annette Munich. And we were hoping to get into the Akashic Records, but we ended up talking about my paranormal haunting instead. So I think it's a good thing to talk about. I just want to acknowledge Heidi. Heidi, thank you for sharing it too. She says, I've been posting the show all over, and we appreciate when you do that. So what are the Akashic Records and your thoughts and what you receive from Spirit?
Well, I have a personal experience with the Akashic Record, because my grandmother, who was born before I was born, would come to see me, right? So every night I get a visit from my grandma. And every night she'd take me on a different experience. Mm-hmm. And the idea was she wanted me to understand the rules of the universe, if you will, and the rules of this incarnation. Because a lot of the people, let's say I just give you my car and I give you my keys and I say, go to the store. And I assume you know how to drive, but you don't even have a driver's license. And then you get pulled over, and then you get written up for all these tickets because you didn't wear your seatbelt, because you didn't do your stop sign or whatever else, right? And then you come back and you say to me, it's unfair. Well, is it really unfair? I should have asked you first, do you know how to drive? The responsibility lies on me. But you should have spoke up and say, I'm sorry, I don't even have a driver's license. I don't think I can do this unless you teach me, right? And it's all about being teachable. So nothing is inaccessible, nothing is hidden, nothing is secret. But no one is teaching us the rules of living on this earth in the third dimension. Yeah. And that's what Akashic Record is a lot about. So my grandmother said, you need to understand these rules so that you can function in this life and be successful and be happy and be able to manifest what you want to manifest, and not manifest the wrong things. Because people think, oh, I can't manifest. Oh, there's bad luck and bad stuff keeps happening to me. No, actually, you're manifesting the bad stuff, right? You just don't realize that what you're doing to manifest these things to happen. So she wanted to teach me about the laws of the universe, the laws of karma, and then she took me on different time and space travels to show me the initiation I received in the past and how I was living in Egypt in the past. And I was like, okay, so this is cool. I have all these wonderful lives that I've had in other places. And none of my past life are like I was a great singer or a queen, or I was just like you're run-of-the-mill person. I was never anybody famous, or right. But in each of these lives, I understood the role that I came to play, because that's what we're doing. We're playing. Right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like playing when you're suffering, but no. Right? But it's all a play. So you're writing a story in your thoughts, in your dreams, in your everyday actions and decisions. And if you don't like the life you're in, my grandma said, you can change it because you're the author. So if you don't like a particular actor in your play, you can give the actor the boot, right? So you can welcome the actors that are willing to play nice with you, and then kick those that are not playing nice or are cheating or violent or thieves or whatever. And so she then took me to the Akashic Records, which is a humongous library. The building is made of liquid crystal. So it's see-through. It reflects a lot of light. It attracts a lot of energy. And it's right in front of this big lake with a fountain. And you can go inside. And if you can picture it, right? There's a lot of books in libraries, but there's a book for every soul. Now, there's not a book for every incarnation that you personally had, but there's one book per soul. But there's already, right now, 7 billion people on the planet. So
almost 8 billion. Yep.
Okay.
See, I have a different perspective of the Akashic Records, but we're going to talk about that. But go ahead. But similar to what you're talking about.
So inside the library, these 8 billion souls all have a book. So it's humongous. But you can go in there, you can access your book, and you can look at your life presently or your past lives, and then you can find what needs to be fixed. And that's the beauty of either having an Akashic Record healing session or taking a class to understand how it works so you can do it for yourself. Because it's not because it happened that it needs to remain traumatic forever. And that's the important thing. Like, whatever's happened has happened. But we can change the trauma attached to it. We can learn the lesson attached to it. And then we can heal that. And it's no longer something that we're dragging like heavy rocks in the backpack, but more something that amplifies our energy and our vibration, making us more fulfilled and more brilliant, I would say.
I agree. I like the way you've described that. I'm just going to say hi to Connie Martins and Julie. Thank you. Yes, I'm still under the weather. Yes, still. So the way I was taught, and I think my mentors probably started a new session. She does a 10-day master class for people. You get quite a bit out of it. I was actually really surprised. I had a lot of people contact me and ask me, what did I think of this mentor and whatever. I said, yeah, she was a great mentor. Now, what she did and the way she does it, she's in Los Angeles. I don't even know how I found her. I think it was from another one of my mentors, but this was quite a few years ago when I took this. So she went within the records and picked 3 different crystals for each of us through the records. And we worked with the crystal and energy. She teaches us how to go into the heart space rather than the heart chakra for people. I was just explaining this the other day to Annette, actually, because she asked me after the show, like, she wanted to know more about this. And so, yes, now what I was taught that there was a record for everything. I love that you said there's a record for every soul, because the way I've described it, and I think the way that you said it really makes it a lot more understandable of anything that ever was, ever is, and ever will be. Because then people say, well, then my life's all planned out. But I love the way that you said you can go into the records and you can rewrite the story, because you can. Absolutely. It's your story. So
and the thing is that what people, I think the biggest hurdle for people to understand the Akashic Record is that they're not in the 3rd dimension, therefore they're outside of time and space.
Yes.
So what we may conceive as something that's past, like in a past life or a future life, for the soul, all of this is happening right
at the same time. At the same time.
For the soul, there's present or future, just the now. So this book, the Akashic Record book, is outside of our time and space. So accessing it allows us to tap into future events or past events, and we can, in a certain way, it's all based on life lessons, influence the results. Because if we're learning our lesson, we don't need to have the chaos that comes with it in the future.
Well, what I was going to explain, though, is, so and I'm going along with what you've said, I agree with you 100%, is when I've been taught to do an Akashic Records reading with someone, for example, we have a prayer that we, with permission to be able to access the records, we go in through the person's heart space. But I was explaining this to somebody recently. Now, could I just work with one of the ascended masters. There's so many over on the other side that will work with us, but we were always taught it's the masters, teachers, and loved ones. So could I just maybe want to work with Mother Mary? I could, but I'm going to get a much more well-rounded approach. And we approach with questions, exactly kind of what you're saying. How do we rewrite the story? And the records always meet the person where you're at when you're asking the question, and we follow it up by more questions. And I've always said to people, the masters, teachers, and loved ones are never going to tell you what you must do or you have to do. It will be with love. It will meet you where you're at, because I've met people who would be very afraid to go in there and think they're going to, receive some terrible news because of something maybe they didn't do that was so nice in this lifetime or whatever. No, It's all with love. It's with guidance, and exactly by the wisdom you receive and the knowledge you receive and the answers you receive. And again, as the person, whether you go in there yourself or you work with Sonya or myself or my friend Leanne Clark does the records as well, you still have free will to follow that advice or not. But they're seeing exactly what you said. It's not in time and space, and they're giving you the best information they possibly can, and you get to choose to decide what you do with that with your story, because I love the way you describe that.
But and also, and whether I give someone an Akashic session or I give them a tarot reading, or I'm not the typical reader because I have no experience for the third dimension, because the third dimension doesn't really exist. It's a concept, right? So all you need to do is change your concept and your reality will change. So why are you worried about the third dimension? So when people come to me sometimes, especially with tarot readings, they're so disappointed because I'm not in the third dimension. I'm like, okay, your soul is now here. This is what your soul accomplished so far. This is what it's trying to accomplish now. And these are the tools that could help you head into this direction. And so that's what my readings are all about. No matter which tools I'm using, my purpose is really to help you realign with your soul's purpose and your soul's goal. And that literally, and that's, I think for me, that's where people are afraid, because they're like, oh, I can't be in the right place, right? I must be, I must be so far off. And I'm like, you can't be. You're never that far off, because your soul's purpose is aligned with what you're good with and what you like and what makes you laugh and what makes you happy. So if you're following these concept of, keep asking yourself, what makes me happy? Like I just had a birthday not so long ago, and people
happy birthday.
Thank you. And everybody's like, why are you spending your birthday alone? It must be so depressing. I said, no. I said, I'm with people. I'm with the public all the time, first of all. So I'm always talking to someone or saying something, right? So it's kind of nice to take one day every year to shut up and do a little bit of introspection. And that's what I'm asking myself. Now, does this still make me happy? Does this still awaken a passion in me? Can I make this better? Right? And those are the questions I keep asking myself. And that keeps me aligned with my soul's purpose. So you're never that as far off as you may think you are.
Do you know what I feel, though? I'm going to just read. We've got Julia Evans, evening from the UK. I know it's late over there. Thank you for joining us. And Z-Sun Dragon, or Kevin, is here. Welcome. I'll read his comment. He said, I see it as a big translucent BOS looking book, and believe we all have one with all our learnings from all lives and parallel universes, information, etc. Have referenced it in dreams or a meditative mindset. But what I wanted to add to your point, and I could be way off with this, but when I'm talking to people and teaching, I always say to them that, and we all meet people like this, that life is terrible. It sucks. Everything I do is going bad. I have bad luck and nothing's going right. I'm not happy. And it's almost like it feels to me that if you look at life kind of like we're in a canoe, right? And maybe we're trying to paddle upstream and nothing's working. If we even just stop, pause, and reflect, eventually the current's going to turn us towards our life's purpose. And that's what people, I think, don't see. It's almost like the universe is giving us a reminder. Like, the reason why this isn't working out is because that's not what you chose.
You're not in the right direction. That's definitely, yeah. I totally agree. 100%. But I think what always surprises me, now I've been doing this now for, my gosh, almost 25 years. The people are terrified to do introspection.
Yeah.
And I really don't know what kind of demons they think they're going to find within themselves.
But you know what I always say, okay, and I say this a lot, it is so easy as an outsider standing on the outside, looking in to see what the person's issues are. But when we have to hold that proverbial mirror up to our own face, that takes a lot of courage and it takes a lot of honesty. I was talking about this on a show I did a couple of weeks ago about the fact that that's why I sometimes still go see other healers, because I can't see it as clearly sometimes as other people can from the outside. And I'm not that arrogant to think I know it all and I can see it all, right?
Well, and not just that, because I actually have a perfect example for that to illustrate that. Now, I've been doing mediumship my whole life. Communicating with the other side is the easiest thing for me, right? It's like for most people putting their underwear on. It's you don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. However, in February, my 100-year-old aunt was hospitalized.
Oh, I remember that, yes.
Yeah, and she had a brain hemorrhage, so she could open her eyes and she could tap her foot, but she can no longer communicate, right? Oh. So, and I can't get through because I'm too emotional, right? So I actually asked one of my students to come to the hospital and to do the communication for me. Yeah. And my student is like, so how do you feel that I'm doing this? I said, I feel great. I feel that you have the skills and you can totally do this. And this is what I mean, that sometimes, it's like the doctor that breaks his arm. He knows what he needs to do to fix his arm, but can he do it by himself? No, he's going to need to go to the hospital and have someone reset his arm and someone else do the plaster because he's in too much pain. And having the knowledge is not always applicable in every situation when you're emotionally or, traumatized or, injured to the point where the pain is taking everything from you, right? So, and she did a fantastic job. And we realized that no one had told my aunt why she couldn't talk. Because she basically was like, well, she can hear me. And she's like, yeah, but you're not talking with your mouth right now. And she's like, well, it feels like you all want to get rid of me. And I'm like, okay. So I said, and I'm thinking, right? I'm like, yeah, I've been here for a few days now. And I guess no one took the time to explain to her what was happening. So then I explained to her, I said, Auntie, it's not like you broke a bone or anything. You got a severe hemorrhage in your brain. So it's not reversible, the damage. We can't heal you from that. It's compressed your brain. So the best you're going to do is be a vegetable. Basically, that's why we're saying that if you need to go, you can go, and you'd be better off than laying on this bed and not be able to eat and move and talk and, So, yeah, and then a few days later, she left us. So, yeah, that was.
You loved your aunt.
Yes, I talk about her all the time, right? I was so proud of her. So, it's not a matter of knowing or not knowing. It's recognizing your ability at the moment. Are you able to do this for yourself, or can you reach out to someone and ask someone to help you out? I do it myself. So it's not a matter of you're not good enough or you don't know.
But I think that's where I was going with that point, though. And if you saw me smile, okay, I haven't tried to connect with my son, but while you were talking, Justin keeps going, hi, Mom. I keep hearing. He's never done that during a show. I'm sorry. That's why I was smiling. I wasn't smiling about your story. It's like, really, kid? And he would have done that while I was live. So that's why I'm laughing. But the thing is, when we're talking, like, that's why people are, most people, like, I know you've probably seen this too, and anybody else that works in this field. Sorry, you got a tear from laughing because it was so funny. And he wouldn't stop. He kept going, hi, Mom. And I'm listening to you. And I think, okay, not right now. It is that most people are afraid. And when they're going through something difficult, they feel like they're the only one who ever goes through it. The same thing, like they'll see, people put celebrity way up on a pedestal, not realizing that they go through the same things as we do. They have the same issues as we do. And what people do, it's kind of like the Instagram influencer, right? They've got this little corner in their house that is perfect, that they film and they bake and they make Pinterest lunches and they do all this. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, and we've seen it because sometimes they'll forget to turn off a camera and they're live and you see what's really going on. This is what people have been led to believe, that we have to live these perfect lives. We have to be perfect. We have to do all this stuff. And it's all about materialism. And they don't realize that. I think that's what they're afraid of, right? To get very honest with themselves and look within, plus conditioning and what they've been taught. Because how many people have we met in our field with no judgment that something awful happens? For example, your aunt dying or my son dying and saying, I hate God. God did this to me. God didn't do this to us, honey. God did not do this to us at all. So I think that that's why people are afraid. Many times it comes from a great place of fear and facing what's really in front of. And what other people think of you is none of your business, really, right? But we haven't been conditioned that way.
Yeah, but I guess my message is I want to let people know, as many people I can reach, is that what's inside of you is your pain, and you can package it, you can treat it, you can try to keep it in the dark, but that's just storing it, and that's what creates illnesses, and that's what's creating health issues and mental health issues and all those things. So you have to, the only way out of this is to go through it.
Yeah.
Right.
Actually, Spirit told me that. Spirit told me this when this happened. And I'm not meaning to keep bringing up my son, but it's applicable. The first day or two, I kept saying, and again, conversing with Spirit is like you said, putting your pants or your shoes on, right? It happens all the time. And I remember saying, I don't like feeling this way. I don't like feeling this way. And I've been around lots of people that have died, being a nurse, working in palliative care. I have had relatives die. And Spirit said exactly that. The only way to get through this is to feel it, to process it, and go through it. Give yourself that grace. And maybe there's going to be a good day. Maybe there's going to be a sad day. And it doesn't have to do with losing someone. It's life, right? But we have to go through it.
And no one, but the funniest thing I've heard in my life was someone telling me, well, let's say I'd say, well, I feel betrayed. And the person says, well, you shouldn't, because that's not. And I'm like, whatever you think is your opinion. Yes. But you cannot judge me and judge what I'm feeling. Those are inside of me. So I think one of the issues in our society is that we don't get to express our emotions. We're told to shut up and toughen up and don't cry, stop crying, right? Yeah. So you're not encouraged to explore your emotion. You're not encouraged to feel your emotion. On the contrary, you're encouraged to snuff it up and put it away because you're making too much noise and you're making me uncomfortable. So, stop, right? So, and that makes it difficult because we don't have the tools to process emotions. We have no idea how to, acknowledge or recognize what the emotion is. And so I think that's the introspection of people. That's what terrifies them because they're afraid they're going to open this bottle. And they're like, well, if I touch this, if I wake up the bear, I'm going to start either being super angry or super sad and I'm not going to be able to stop it, right? I barely can control it and snuff it. So if you're asking me to open this, it's just going to open volcano-like, and I won't be able to stop it. And I'm like, exactly. That's exactly what we need you to do. We need you to cry. We need you to scream. We need you to do what you need to get it out of your body. Mm-hmm. And yes, you're right, Michelle. Then the weight comes off because you're no longer carrying all of this inside of you. Mm-hmm. So you need to allow these things to be felt and to be expelled, because once you felt it, then it's gone. Like I'm a end-of-life doula, and I work with people who either are dying or people who are left after. Right. Yeah. So I work with the people in their grief and things like that. And this girl came to me and she's like, every time I come here, I cry. I said, yes, but do you cry anywhere else? She's like, no, because it's been 2 years and I think that they feel that I should be over it by now.
Too bad.
So I said, but did anybody actually say that to you? She's like, no, but I feel that. And I'm like, okay, so you need to do it. And if you're crying because, I don't know, you hear a song at the market, cry. And if someone says, are you okay? You can say, no, because I miss my partner that died 2 years ago. And this still reminds me of him. And it's still painful. And she's like, well, when is this going to stop? I said, once you have gone through your grief, once you have gone through your tears, once you have gone through your loss, you will start remembering this person's laughter and the person's, when you tricked them or when you had this wonderful picnic, and you won't remember the loss. Now you'll be able to feel joy again and be reminded of those in a, as a memory, but not as a hurt or as an emptiness.
So Connie Martin says it would be so nice to have a grieving field where we can go and scream and cry out loud freely if it's what we need to do. And I agree with you. And when you said, this woman had shared with you about, I feel like, I forget how you worded it, but basically that people think she should be over it. That is a real big pet peeve of mine, because I've worked a lot in the death and dying field too. And grief is such a personal experience, just like feelings are a personal experience. And I think I always say people are smart. Even though people don't know they all have a sixth sense, they do. But we may be perceiving it in our grief, that when we bring up the person we've lost, for example, everybody shuts up and everybody changes the subjects. And then there are people that'll say, don't you think it's been enough time now? You need to move on. But what they don't realize, right, we're picking up that it's making the other people uncomfortable. But the thing, and I was talking to Carrie Lynn Shellhorn. She's got Spirit Switchboard on Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can give her a shout out. And I'm hoping in the future, we're going to do a couple shows about this, because I can tell you, when somebody close to us dies, it is a real study in the human condition, and it's difficult, but I felt I had to have a lot of grace, because say some of the messages people sent, they weren't coming from a mean space. They were uncomfortable with the topic of death.
Yes.
And because it's not normalized, people don't know what to say. They don't want to see someone cry or make someone cry. So they feel and some people said some pretty horrible things, but again, to them just like, well, it was his time, and it was like my son was.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
We were really thinking. I know they weren't coming from a mean space. It's because you don't know what to say, and we need to normalize the topic of death. Because there's only one thing, if you were born, that you were guaranteed. Well, they always say taxes and death, but you are not getting out of here alive. So we need to talk about death.
And the thing is that, like, when I got my training for the end of life doula and grieving and all these things, I was surprised that I was taught this is what you say, and I'm like, okay. And then while we're on the course, like, those people were offended by those remarks, and I was like, okay. I said, so what would you have me say? Do you know what I mean? What would make you feel better? Because at this point, it's also very subjective to the people, right? Like, my aunt was 106 months. So people are like, well, my sympathies. And some people add, well, she had a long life. Like, yes.
We're aware of that. But if I had my choice, I would have had it for another 1,000 years.
But, that was not necessary to add, right? Or it was her time. Well, not really, no, but whatever, right?
Okay, so Michelle Wilfong says it's hard to know what to say or not to say when someone passes. Now, what I've tried to teach my surviving son, long before we lost his brother, that when people really need someone, it's not when the death happens. It is not when the shock is there and the family and the friends are all there. It's when everybody else's life returns to normal and you're starting to process the grief. And what I've often suggested is, if you're close enough to the person, don't ask, just do. You know what? Like, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't think you'd be offended, or I would, or anybody else. Someone shows up, maybe with a casserole, or just says, hey, I was thinking of you, just letting you know they're there, like being there, just being there. And I know it's uncomfortable, the silence, but sometimes people don't need to hear that. We're glad you know that you've acknowledged it. Yes, I've lost someone I've loved, but just being there with them means a lot. Or even as a friend, even if you don't know them well, just saying, hey, I was thinking about you today. I hope you're doing okay. Right? Nothing wrong with that.
No, absolutely not. And I think too, I said, like for me, I needed time to process what that meant for me now.
Yeah.
Right? Because that changes a lot of things for me, because a lot of things revolved around her. So now I'm like, okay, so I don't need to do this anymore. I don't need to do that anymore. Do I need to even do that? And so I have to, it's not just, you know, the fact that I miss her and I can't hug her anymore, but it's how my life has changed and how my responsibilities have changed. And that's, yeah, and for some people, you know, their finances have changed. And you know, there's so many things that can happen. At the death of the last one, it's not just getting over the fact that they're not there right now. It's also grieving the dreams. Like for her, they were getting married and they were going to start trying for children. The client I have, right? She's like, I'm grieving my child that I can't have now because you know, now I need to get over this death. I maybe find someone else eventually down the line, and am I going to be too old for children, right? So she's grieving that as well. And they were going to buy this house. Well, that all, you know, fell true. And so there's so many more things that come in line with this grieving process that we can't judge how long it's going to take a person and how badly affected they are. Like I have a roommate. Well, so we share the same space together, but she's also my business partner. She's my traveling partner. You know, she's my admin assistant. She's all these things. When I lose this person, I'm going to be completely lost. It's going to take me weeks just to figure out how things work without her around, right? So I don't think anybody should be in any way capable to judge how long your own process should last. And definitely, you know, we just need to be supportive and say, okay, it's a crying day today. What do you need? Do you need soup? Do you need me to hold your hand? Do you want to go for a walk? And you don't, people think they always have to talk.
That's what I was trying to say. You don't need to talk. Just be. Just be. If someone's watching TV and you happen to spend an hour, go over and just, you know, and eventually it'll come up. But that's the other thing that's not comfortable for people. Like you said, you think they need to feel the silence. Or if, say, it was you or I, and we were talking about our loved one, and if we cried, people get uncomfortable because it's not a good feeling. It's not, that's where I'm going with this about normalizing the subject of death. Or like I said, there's one thing I've always wanted people to know, why I taught my own kid this, and long before we went through this, is your friend is your friend or your love, you know, another loved one or your partner, whoever, they are going to need you to be there as the support when all the support goes away and everybody's life goes on back to normal. Like I can tell you, I've had people, you've been one of them. There've been other friends that have done this too, just checking in. Hey, how you doing? That means so much to me because, you know, the other person is thinking about you. And, you know, a lot of people don't feel comfortable or even know what they need. Like you just said, you're a roommate and you guys are everything to each other in the way of like with the business, the whole bit, right? Sometimes people don't even know what they need, but just knowing that someone's thinking about them or has thought of them or cares about them or whatever it is, right? Just out of the blue, that means a lot. Or if you know the person needs something done, like say you've got an elderly neighbor who the husband always cut the grass and they've passed away and now they're not going to get the grass cut, but you're going to cut your own. If you've got the time, just go cut the grass for them. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So the advantage of knowing about the soul and the Akashic record is that you realize you've lost the physical attachment to the person, but their soul lives on.
Yes.
Right? So you may not be able to touch them. You may not be able to go out and have a restaurant dinner with them, but they're still alive. At the very least, you will meet them again when you die.
Mhm.
But there's a high chances, and I find that more and more people are opening up their third eye with less fear and more confidence, and there's more and more people having experiences and seeing people that have passed away and things like that, and then you can communicate with them. Now,
Mhm.
personally, I know that first of all, when they leave, they have 40 days to leave, so it's not uncommon to see them for the first 40 days, right?
I agree. You see them and hear them.
But after 40 days, they should be encouraged to go into the light so that they can start their process of resetting everything and analyzing their Akashic record, seeing what this life of theirs brought, what lessons they've learned, and do all that. And then a year after they've passed, that's when I usually will encourage it, not encourage, but allow other people to come to me to make the connection. Right. So I usually give them a whole year before calling them back here, because you want them to go into the light first. Right. But if you know that they're still alive, you know that they're no longer suffering, because what causes the suffering was the human body, and they're out of the human body now. So the suffering is ended. If you know that they're now rejoicing, like she kept saying, well, I miss my mom. Like her mom's been dead for 60 years. She hasn't seen her mom for 60 years. So I can see that it would be a rejoicing moment for her to actually be with her mom again. And she was the last one. So all of my other aunts, all my other uncles have all passed before she did. So she's joining the family again. She's seeing these souls again. So I think that's
Well, Howie's adding, he says, who says when it is time, there is no time for being over. You're never over that missing space. That's true. But we do go on forever. I've been watching a lot of TV as I've been doing stuff, and I wanted to get caught up on a few things. And so I started watching this TV series, keep hearing about The White Lotus. It's kind of a weird TV HBO series, but it's a hotel series, The White Lotus, these very high-end resort places. And the latest series is in Thailand. And something that I thought was really beautiful in one of the most recent episodes was this daughter of a wealthy couple wants to stay in Thailand and join this Buddhist monk place. And so the father goes to speak to, he wasn't, he's very high up, I'll say, very elderly Buddhist monk. And so he says to him, what happens to us when we die? And he says, well, and I'm not going to do it justice, but he basically says we're in an ocean. And when we decide to come to Earth, we come as a drop from the ocean. And when we go back home, we integrate back into the ocean. He said it much more eloquently and beautifully. But he was basically, the way he explained it is, we're not gone. Just the physical body is gone. And we're not limited. Like, I truly believe that, and it's hard for us. I always say we're trying to look at things with our human eyes right now, because we're here to have a human experience, but we are nothing but love on the other side. We go on forever, and we are not limited with a body. We could be in a gazillion different places at time. We can connect and feel and speak to our loved ones. They still hear us. Same as when somebody is in a coma. The last thing to go is our hearing. People hear us. Now, for your aunt, you said about her mother, I wouldn't have been surprised, because I'm writing 3 books, and one of them is the things that we witness at the bedside as death doulas, as nurses, and first responders when someone leaves this plane and goes back home. And I can't tell you how many loved ones are there when somebody is transitioning back home.
Yeah, with my dad, he told me, he's like, who are all these people doing here? And I'm like, well, who's there, Dad? And he's like, well, my dad's here, your uncle, this one, this one, this one. He says, they're all here. And I'm like, okay, so what's the problem with that? Well, Grandpa wants me to go with him and repair the porch. And I'm like, okay, well, I said, you got the knowledge, you got the skills. I guess he's been waiting for you to show up and do the job. You know what I mean? So, and my dad passed away the next morning. So, but he was able to see them in the room all night. And I said, Dad, it's cool. I said, they're just there to escort you. So, you don't have to be afraid, and there's nothing to fear. And you're going to have a full escort to take you to the light on the other side. I said, this is awesome. This is what everybody would want, right? I think the worst thing would be there's nobody there. Like, You hear the crickets.
I don't believe that somebody leaves, that there's nobody there. That's just my thoughts. Like, I even talked to my ex-husband about this. His mom and dad are no longer here. And I said, I'm very grateful because his parents were the main grandparents in my children's life. And they love both my boys so much. And I said to him, I know your mom and dad were there to meet Justin when he crossed over. I have other relatives there that he may have known when he's back home, but there would be people there to meet him. He loved his cats. His cats would have been there. And I truly believe it, just from being in the death and dying field for 30, 40 years working in this field. And then, like I said, that's why I'm writing a book, because sometimes we see things ourselves. I know we do in the field that we're in, but I didn't know I had these abilities as a nurse back 40 years ago, we'll say 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it is. But people reporting these things, and then you see them and you're like, holy cow, like there's no explanation. And some of the stories I've collected already are just mind-blowing, and there's no other explanation.
Amazing. And when we start putting those together into a book, and you're like, wow. I collected all my stories about the fifth dimensional experience I've had in my life, and I was like pretty shocked at just how many I've accumulated. And okay, well, that one's done, and then that one's done. But once you start recalling each and every one of them, I was like, oh wow, oh yeah, right. And I think it's important to share those, because people are more and more aware of this. People are more open to receiving this information. There's less fear around all this. So giving them some sort of guideline of what to expect, I think is really, really important.
I'm going to read some of these comments here. So you got Lisa Martinello says, good evening, ladies. You got Howie Odell here. He's got the Riff Nation Network. He's a big supporter of our network, UPRN. He's got his own show, The Orion Effect, with a good friend of mine as well. So that's Sunday night. So please, Rhonda Harris is his co-host, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He's here. So he says, I put this comment up earlier, but he said, who says when it's time? There is no time for being over. I'm going to read that again. You're never over that missing piece. That's true. Julie says there's no timeline on grief. And then I like what Kevin, I always call him by his muggle name, Z-Sun Dragon. He says, I believe they can and will visit at any time, whether they cross over or not. I'm with you. I believe that myself. I do. So let's talk about this a little bit. I don't think we've ever talked about it. So what have you thought the reasons are for why people stay earthbound? Why we run into ghosts?
You want to go there, do you?
Well, these guys love to talk about all this stuff, spiritual, spooky, and I always like to hear people's perspective on this.
Okay, so how deep down the rabbit hole do you want me to get?
Yep, let's go there. We don't usually go spooky. You and I have talked spooky off air, but let's go, because you know why? I think it gives people, when we are in this spiritual field, and I received this advice years ago when all I wanted to deal with was the positive. I wanted nothing negative. Then I had my paranormal experience, but someone said to me, close to me, that Laura, you're going to work in this field. You need to know both, so you particularly know the difference. And I believe that. Mm-hmm. And I know you have knowledge about this.
Well, it's interesting because I just did a big conference in Quebec in February, and the topic of suicides came up. Mm-hmm. Because
you might have to be careful with that word on YouTube for you and me, because we're on YouTube. So we'll say unalive. We'll say unalive. That's okay.
All right, no problem. So I don't usually talk about this because I'm trying to explain the soul and all those things, mm-hmm. And so they're asking, so what happens to them? So specifically, if you decide to interrupt your lifeline, mm-hmm. you are interrupting a plan. Now,
and not just your plan.
Yes.
Catalyst, you are all around. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So it's not that everything is written down. You will say hello to this person at this time and blah, blah, blah. Because we have free will, we can do whatever we want. However, as a soul, before coming to Earth, you said, I want to learn how to forgive. I want to learn how to be honest in my relationship. You set out some life lessons for yourself in order for your soul to grow. And in order to achieve this, you said, who's going to help me? And then all these people are like, oh, me, I'll show up. And okay, I'll make your life terrible, so you'll have no choice but.
What?
Right? Mm-hmm. So we set all these plans up. There's a huge contract that we are to fulfill. And at the same time, we also raised our hand and said, oh, I'm going to help you with this. And I'll be there for you at that moment. Right? Yeah. It could be innocent. Like, I've been checking up on you, you know. I don't think it was that big of a deal, but I care and I want to make sure that you're okay. Well, I volunteered for that before coming to Earth. I said, I will meet Lorilei, and I will be there for her when she needs me. Right?
Thank you.
However, if you decide to end this life of yours, well, all of the arrangements that you had said you were going to be there for all these people. Let's say I would have done this. Well, I wouldn't be here talking today. I wouldn't have written all the books I've written. I wouldn't have reached out to all the people I've reached out. And I know I've helped people because people, I can see how their life changed. I can see how they're happier, how they're healthier, right? I've seen that part of that change was caused because I participated. So I would have negatively influenced these people by my absence. And so these souls are put in the timeout. They're not punished. They're not sent to hell. They're not, raked over the coals for 1,000 years. However, they are put on the timeout so that they understand the implication of what they just caused. And then there's also, because they're gone, a whole bunch of other people now have to step up to the plate to replace them. And some people just might not meet their mark at 35, and it might not be happening until 45 or 50. So you're adding 10 or 15 years of suffering or stagnation to their life because you weren't there to trigger the change, right? So those souls are put aside, and they're being explained their implication, and they are sent to school, and they're sent to learn, and they go to increase their faith, and they have other sojourns, as Edgar Casey would call them, on other planets. So in planets where you don't incarnate in the physical, and the effect that you cause is much less than when you're on the third dimension on Earth. So that's for these type of souls. So those don't go into the light just yet. They go to school. Now, there's an in-between. And it's funny because unfortunately, because my aunt passed away, I haven't done my own podcast on Dante. And Dante wrote Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradiso. So, but what happens is when your attachment to the material world is so intense, you are refusing to let go of it. And that's why you don't go into the light. So it's interesting because that's one of the few things that the Christians have correctly captured in the truth of spiritual world. The 7 sins. So pride, greed, wrath, gluttony, lust, sloth, and which one am I missing?
I can't remember. Yeah.
Those 7 are the reason why they're mortal sins. It's because it's preventing your soul from moving forward in the divine space. It's trapping you on a material plane without the material body. So you'll never get what you're trying to get. It's a never-ending cycle. And I would say that that's hell. To be caught in this loop that you keep repeating over and over and over and over again until eventually something awakens in you and says, okay, I need to do something different. I can't keep doing this. And literally you pop out of this box. If figuratively you can put it a room or a box. And then the problem is that you might not know your way back to the light. And so you might be walking around trying to find a light. And that's when they'll come to follow people home or start, attaching themselves to light workers because they're light. It's not the light. It's not the divine. It's not this ocean you were talking about. Whether you call it an ocean or I say that it's basically being a dust, a speck of dust on the sun. So you are infinitesimally small, like a drop in the ocean, but you're part of this light. You're still conscious that you're you, but you're also part of this grander scheme of things, this greater energy of love. And so they need help to go from leaving this box or this room they were stuck in to go into the light.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
that's an interesting perspective. Now, you know, and we get into some of these topics on Thursday nights because my co-host David, and he doesn't believe in demons. Now he's kind of migrating a little bit from some of the experiences I've shared. And I said, you can call them whatever you want, because there's different astral planes, right? Like there is. And I've always said, like, you know, there's always an opposite on Earth. There's a yin, there's a yang, there's a night, there's a day, there's a hot, there's a cold, right? You can't have one without the other. And I always say, to me, the way Spirit's shown me, if there was a perfect ideal place for a human being or any living being on this planet to be, it would be perfectly grounded to the center of Gaia or Earth, perfectly connected to Source or God or universe, whatever somebody wants to believe it, through the invisible energy centers, I call it the chakras, right? And you have the perfect balance of yin and the perfect balance of yang. So I don't think you can have one without the other. Now, just running into, like, you and I talked about this, and I didn't ask you before, so I hope you're comfortable, but you had run into the Hat Man, right? Going to clear.
Yes.
So are you comfortable sharing and what you discovered? Because I'm very familiar with the Hat Man. I had one of those things. I'm getting goosebumps. At my house, I had 4 main very negative entities at my previous home. Mm-hmm.
Well, I was at one of my students' house, mm-hmm. and they invited me over for dinner. So they said, well, not that we want you to work, but would you, I'm like, it's okay.
Would you mind?
What is it? And then they said, well, my daughter is unable to sleep in their room. She never gets to get a good night's sleep. So she always ends up in my bed. And so we're starting to wonder if there's something in the room that, is affecting your sleep. So could you go check? And I'm like, sure. So I walked into the room, and normally I walk in with my eyes open. But for some reason, I needed to get my eyes closed because I was working with a lot of shadow. And so shadow for shadow, I see shadow better with my eyes closed. But that's me, right? It'll be different for everybody else. But
believe it or not, there are things that I do that, for me, visually, there's too much coming in. I have to close my eyes and I can do it better.
Yeah. So for this, I really needed to see the very subtle energy. And so I had to close my eyes. So I'm walking like a blind person in the room. And then they had kind of a roof like this, right? And they had opened that up. So right where the closet used to be, right here is, so obviously I get there and I bumped my head against the wall and I'm like, oh, okay. So I said, it's right here. And it was really interesting because I was able to part space and time. Yep. So that there was kind of a rip in the space-time continuum there. And I was able to open it. And then this thing pops out at me like a jack in the box. So, if a jack in the box, even if it's a stupid clown, it just pops. So you automatically have a woo kind of
jump. Yeah.
And I'm looking at this and I'm going, what? And I'm, are you actually trying to scare me right now? And I'm trying to because that's what I usually will do when I need to get an entity to leave a house they're stuck in. I'll talk to them, right? And I'll say, okay, judging by your clothes, you've been dead at least 100 years. This is a bicentennial house, so I wouldn't have been surprised if that would have been the case. And I usually tell them, you've been dead for a long time, why are you still here? And they'll say, well, I'm waiting for my kids. Your kids have been gone for a long time. They're waiting for you on the other side. So why don't I open the door for you and send you there? Yeah. But this thing was very interesting because it didn't have legs anymore, and it had kind of a seahorse. You know how seahorse attach themselves after branches with their tail? It wraps around and it's coiled around. And I was like, oh. I said, I see. So I told my student, without looking at her, because I'm staying very focused on this entity, because I got him cornered, so I don't want him to go anywhere. So I said, go get me this and go get me that. And she's running all over the house getting me what I need. And so we untied him. And then I had to kind of hold this tail so it wouldn't attach to, it's a mix between a seahorse and what's the English word for these things? They have 8 legs. Octopus.
Oh, octopus.
It felt very, very slimy, and anyway, it's on a whole black thing, and I'm like, okay, well, you can't stay here, and you don't want to go into the light, so I'm going to put you into the hands of these people. So I asked the people that I work with on the other side, and I'm like, okay, so you guys handle this because we don't want this anymore. So it left the house, and then we go down the stairs in the kitchen, and I'm like, he's like, so what did this look like? I said, well, it was just all black, just red eyes, really weird, and I had that kind of tail thing. But I said, it's gone now, and I sewed back this rib so that they wouldn't be able to have access anymore. And that's when he talked to me about he also grew up having nightmares entire childhood, and he said there were always these dreams where these men. It was always a man wearing kind of a black trench coat and a black hat.
Yeah.
And he says they would be. He says they would terrorize me just by their own presence. So I was like, well, were they doing anything? He says their presence is so chilling.
It is.
He says, I would freeze. And he says, it's like that dream paralysis. You can't wake up and you can't move. You can't. You just stuck. He says it was a terrifying experience, and he had them his entire childhood. So and then he says his son was having issue, and now the youngest was having issues. So we tried to do a little bit of research because it was my first time encountering the man. I guess they refer to it with the man with the hat or
the hat on, yeah.
And but what I found interesting was that they target children. And they
didn't target children. Well, they targeted my children, but I have pictures of some of these things from my house. Like all of us could see. So it wasn't just my kids, but yeah, they do. Well, you know why they target children? Because they know children can see them. They know how to fight the child.
What I understood, because I still have a contact on the other side, which is remained to be my mentor. So when things like that I don't quite understand happen, I can ask some question. And I'm like, why children particularly? He says, because they're easy to terrorize.
That's what I was trying to say. Yes, and they can see them, because I think all kids can see spirit, just like animals can. Yeah,
exactly. And he says they feed on terror.
They all do the negative things: terror, sadness, depression, all the 7 deadly sins. If they can create that in the home, yes, that's what they feed on. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So so anyway, we cleared that out of the house for them, but it was my first encounter with something like that. My nights when I was younger, I've spent most outside of my body. Right, I was never really home, and I would revisit past lives at night. So that's I was terrorized to live in daytime. So I said, if I also had it at nighttime, I don't think I would have made it past childhood. I think I
had a lot of things. And when this happened to me in my previous home, and knowing I've had these abilities my whole life, but this experience is what really made me tap in and really get serious about the abilities. I've had tons of things as a nurse that I would know that there's no way I would know. My roommate I grew up with said, you would know things. I just wouldn't even know how you'd know them, and you'd know them. Like when I told her I was working in this field, she wasn't shocked. I thought she would be. She goes, oh God, Laura, I'm not even surprised. Like there were things you would know always. But I can tell you, I'll be 60 in August. My first experience, I was between 3 and 4. And it was terrifying with what happened. And then I've told this story many times. When I was just turning 8, we moved to a brand new home, and it had been built from the ground up. And that first 6 months, every night, I knew nothing about 3 a.m. I knew nothing about the paranormal. Every night, 3 a.m., I would wake up unable to breathe, passing out. And they eventually diagnosed me with asthma. As a nurse, I know what asthma is. My boys have asthma. No, I couldn't take a breath in. I couldn't take a breath out. I like literally no 911. My dad would have to scoot me up in the car. We'd get about a block away and I'd be able to breathe. I've never been able to find that out, why that happened. But I was told when I was first reaching out looking for help in the previous home, and I thought it sounded very arrogant. I now understand it now. They had said, this experience is happening to you because you are supposed to be doing something for the light, that they're hoping you're never ever going to head that way, that you're going to stay away from it. You're not going to be doing what you're supposed to be doing, because it was a terrifying experience. And my boys went through it. My partner Dell went through it, like I said, but I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today had I not gone through it.
Yeah, exactly. That we all have, and that's very important. I think actually it's much more important than people might think. We all have events in our life, whether like you, they were happening in the middle of the night, or we have a person that does things to us. They are triggers. And without those triggers, we would have just had our comfortable life, never asking a question, and just go on and just, do like everybody else. Go to work, collect your paycheck, go home, and just do your routine. And without discomfort, without fear, without questioning, you're not going to move. You're going to be stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the more the events are impressionable on you, the more they leave a lasting mark, or they're unforgettable, the more you're going to want to go for answers and find what is going on. Why is this happening? What is the meaning behind this, right? These are the questions that led me to where I am today. If I didn't have those questions, I could have just kept working for the RCMP and just collect my paycheck and just, it technically was easier than all of the work I'm doing now, because, I'm working a lot harder now. It's a lot more work, but I've seen how it changed my life, how it made my life better, how it made me as a person a better person, but also a healthier person, and a better environment. So the environment that I've successfully created from all these transformations that I went through is now benefiting the entire community. So my transformation is assisting a whole lot of other people to do this transformation for themselves. And hopes is that eventually they'll feel confident enough to also start doing the changes as they go back to their community, to create a whole new world that we're living in.
Well, I think we're kind of migrating that way anyways. But it's almost like, from what Spirit's shown me, like we're seeing things that are coming out, say, even in public, that we would never have seen exposed, for example, I'll say. And it's almost like it's all got to come to the surface. All of it's got to be revealed, right? It's kind of like how we talked about at the beginning of the show about the feelings, right? You've got to go through them and feel them and process them. This is what this almost feels like the dark is being exposed.
Exactly.
I'm talking about demons, or I'm talking about awful things, say people in power that have a lot of money, have a lot of power, that they've always done in the shadow and underground. It's starting to get exposed.
Have you seen, there was a movie that came out, I think it was last summer. It's about an FBI agent who works in trying to trap pedophiles and the whole sex trafficking of children. And, these things are finally being exposed. Now, I went to watch the movie because it was a fundraiser part of it. And I'm sitting there and I've been told this movie is terrible. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, and I leave and I look at the people around me. I'm like, I knew all this. There's nothing.
So do I know, and people are shocked by it.
There was nothing shocking in there. They're looking at me and their eyes are like this big. And they're like, that was shocking to us. Maybe because you were in that field and you did these investigations. But for the most people, we live behind shutters and closed doors, and we don't want to see these things. I said, well, in order for it to stop, we need to become aware of these things. Everything needs to be exposed so we can find solution to make it stop. We can no longer just close our door and say, oh no, I didn't see it, it doesn't exist. And that's ludicrous. In this day and age, the truth has to come out.
I agree with you. I think that that's what's starting to happen now. And I know it's shocking for people. I got this tattoo recently for Justin. And the kid that I was getting it done with. And we started talking. I have to be careful again on YouTube with these words. And it's unfortunate, but we do. But it's a drug that is harvested in one of the most awful ways it possibly could be, basically from a child's terror, I will say, and nothing more. I won't bring the word up. And he was arguing with me, telling me that never been heard of this substance before. It was living and dying in LA or something, some book. And I said, you're wrong. And he said, I know everything about every drug out there and blah, blah, blah. And there's no chemical component. Well, while we were sitting there, I found it. And I found the information saying this has long existed before this book came out 20 years ago. But this is the thing, right? And then people think, and I forget who I had this conversation with recently, because they were arguing with me about looking up information. And I was saying, it might even have been on Thursday night, Dave and I were talking about it, but I was saying to people that, that's what it was. We're having a conversation about AI. And I was saying, you can't just rely on one source for information. Same thing. I'm a spiritual teacher. You're a spiritual teacher. My thoughts are, I always encourage my students to work with as many different mentors as possible, because otherwise we're just getting that one perspective. Same thing with information. So because this person, I believe, probably has only used Google to look things up, there's a lot of information in books that have been written that aren't so manipulated as per just using one search engine. Talk to other people that have had experiences, right? We're losing the ability to be able to communicate with one another with these electronic devices people are sticking their faces in. And that's the thing. And now AI. And I'm not crapping on AIs. That's not what I'm saying. There's a purpose for it, but it can't be the be all to the end all. We were born with a brain. We got to use it.
I'm not a big Facebook person, but I've had some time to look at things, and then the comments is always, oh, this is AI created, it's not real, and this is what's Sound of Freedom. Yes, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So
and that movie was tame. That movie was very tame compared to what really goes on. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So it's palatable. Right, to a certain degree. They don't show you, because my concern was, it's about sex trafficking, and I said, I hope they don't show.
Well, I don't need to see it, neither does anybody else, but it was very tame.
And they don't show that part. They don't show what the kids go through. You just see them before and after kind of thing. But the problem is with this AI thing, you can now create, you could use my face, and you could make me say something that I'm not saying, but they're using my head and my face from another video, but they're saying it's kind of scary at this point, because before AI, when you could see things, and I don't know, Keanu Reeves said this, or this guy said that, and I said, well, until I see them either on video, live video, say this to me, I'm gonna give it an ounce of doubt, right? Because it could be anybody just putting their name at the end of a quote, right? So you don't know if they really said this or not. But now even video won't be trustworthy, because they can manipulate everything. So hence why it's so important to have multiple sources. Like when I do my podcast, this is one of the reasons why mine are so far behind. I usually have 5 to 6 to 8 different sources that I read from.
I know how much research you do. Yes.
And I'm going to present all these different aspects from all these different angles, so that you can get a really clear picture. This is my personal opinion, which I present at the end of the video. But what I'm saying is, this is what's out there. This is what people are saying, and this is how they mesh to each other. And maybe he has 50% of the truth, and he has 25. But if you're putting all these sources together, gives you a bit better picture. Blah blah blah, right? But if you just do a search on Google, I was telling this to my kids 10 years ago. They were handing in papers for school, and I'm like, you only have one source, and you got this from the internet. This is unacceptable.
And it's manipulatable.
Exactly. Right. So I said you need verifiable information, verifiable experiences. You need people that will share firsthand experience, not hearsay. That's the 10th person telling a story. Well, it's not at all what the first person was saying. That they all add their salt and pepper and spices to this story to make it interesting, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why when I'm invited on a show or I do my own stuff, I usually talk from personal experience. And I don't, although I have plenty of other examples, I'm like, I wasn't there. I didn't experience that. I can't speak to that. Mm-hmm. But I can speak to my personal experience because I lived it, and that's what happened to me, right? So that's why I usually draw these lines, because I don't know if it's true or not. I was not there. Are they doing it for attention? I have no idea. So unless I've lived it, I usually don't use other people's examples, because that way.
Yeah, and I agree. Or like when we were talking about the stories that I'm collecting right now for what we witness at the bedside when someone transitions, I was going to share this story. This person I know, their mother is a nurse. They're a nurse. And their mother talked about an experience which she shared with me. Now, am I going to take it from the daughter's perspective? No, when I finally write the book, I will, with her permission, speak to the person who experienced it. She was on nights, and it was a First Nations little boy that was going to be leaving this earth very soon. And mom, I think, was a single mom living up on the reserve, but had a lot of other children that she had to go to. So this little one was alone. And it was a really crazy night on pediatrics. Apparently, the nurse did as much as she could to be in there. And I guess the little boy they were with him, he did pass away. But they were so busy, they closed the door and they covered him respectfully so that they could get to him once things settled down a little bit. Well, as they were running around, the call bell kept going off in that room. Kept going off. They'd run in there. Nobody's in there. This little boy's no longer with us. And it went on numerous times. And the nurses kept saying, like, what the heck is going on here? And I believe this girl's mom, she shared the story of, said, oh my gosh, I remember the mom saying to me that if God forbid we're not here, you must open a window. This is our belief, so the soul can leave. So she went into the room, opened the window, call bell never went off again. You can take it for what it is, but there was nobody in there the call bell wasn't malfunctioning. There was nothing going on. Now, again, people can take it for what it is. You can rationalize and say, well, there must have been a short. There must have been something. Well, why was the call bell not going off after the window was opened, right?
And see, I wouldn't question that. I would completely be along with that story. Yeah, to me, that makes a lot of sense. From all the experiences I've had, that makes so much sense to me.
And people may say, well, a window doesn't have to be opened when a soul leaves. Yes, but if this little boy was told that and the family believed that, he may very well have still hung on to that belief as he was leaving as a soul that the window needed to be opened.
So, earlier you asked me, why would people not go into the light? Mm-hmm. There's a group of Asian people that worked during the gold rush and during the building the railway, right? These Asian people died and they were not given proper ritual.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And so because they didn't receive proper ritual, they didn't feel they were able to cross. Mm-hmm. Your thoughts are creating your world. So if you are thinking, because you still think you're still there, you just don't have a physical body, but all that goes inside your head is still there because that's your consciousness. And if your consciousness says, I cannot go and pass this door because I did not receive the proper ritual, they don't go, because as far as they're concerned, the door is closed. And so when I teach mediumship, we are teaching people they can go to different areas that they know that are haunted. And you can, if you feel the spirits are there, there's a way to pass them into the light. And I was there with an Asian person. They wouldn't pass with me. Mm-hmm. They only passed with the Asian person telling them that the ritual is nice, but it's not necessary. They can go into the light and the doors open. They can pass nice, and off they went. right? So yes, absolutely.
I'm going to address this comment. So, hi, Mish. Mish is over in the future in Australia. She says, is it cold over there? You both have winterish backdrops. It most certainly is here. We are in a winter storm warning again for the second time this week. So, yes, it's still cold here. But she said maybe the little boy did that for the parents. I don't believe so, because the parents weren't with him when he passed.
Yeah.
He was on his own because mom had to go to look after the other children. And of course, they were hoping mom probably would have been there if she thought, he wasn't going to be there much longer, but she had to leave. So it was the nurses that were with him. So he didn't do it for anybody except, like, that's the other thing to try to explain with the way I believe this. And I think you're going to probably add so much more to this, is the fact that, we're here to have a human experience. We come here in these dense, fragile, heavy bodies, most of us without remembrance of previous lifetimes or the knowledge or anything we have as a true soul energy. Okay. But when we leave, right, there's still a transition period, which you sort of address, where we're detaching from who we are. I'll say as Lorilei Potvin, and I'm going back to the true soul energy, who I am. We all have names as a soul too, but we don't need names on the other side as energy. But this is where I'm going with this, is it would make perfect sense why this little boy, had he been told the window needs to be open for you to truly leave, say with the angels or Father Sky, Mother, whatever it is, Mother, you know what I mean, the belief systems he's been taught, he's still got that human perspective still attached to him as a soul energy. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I was with my aunt for like a week straight, and I had to go home. And I was on my way back the next morning, and she passed away just before 8:00. So she did it before I was there. So, but she popped everywhere, She went to all these different pieces, and she needed messages before she left because she couldn't do it in the body. So usually the timeline for the now there's something else that lives inside the body with you. It's a shared space. Now some people call that the guardian angel. Some people call that the body elemental. And I think that's where all this confusion comes from.
Well, let's talk more about this.
Because so many names for the one thing, right? So it gets confusing because, oh, but you have this, and the other one says, no, this is what you've got. And everybody's arguing. And when you sit everybody down, you're like, okay, let's instead of the name, give me the definition. What's its job, right? It's to accompany you all your life. It's to protect you. It's to guide you, right? So that's also what the body elemental does. And he's the one, usually, if you're like, I'm female, you'll have the male energy will be encased inside this body elemental. So that's your twin flame, yes? And so their job is, while you're incarnated, they write everything down. And because they share your space with your body, they know what you feel. They know what you think. You cannot hide from that being. And that being takes 3 days to separate from the body.
Interesting. So, I think I'd heard that before.
It takes longer for the elemental body or guardian angel or whatever you want to call it to leave the physical body than it does us. Because they can't vacate until we vacate.
That would make sense. Now, Mish says, I was with my dad, but didn't notice anything possibly too emotional. Well, maybe there wasn't anything to notice except that you were there to be there with your dad as he transitioned. Not everything, every time somebody leaves this planet, is there something monumental or incredible. Never mind that. I think you've really touched on a button there, Michelle. You were very emotionally connected. I can tell you, when my son died in front of me, I wasn't thinking about, oh God, did I notice his soul leave? Did I notice? It's too close, I think. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that as well, Sonya.
I mean, like I said, I'm very well versed in communicating with the soul, but I was so emotionally involved with my aunt that I just couldn't do that connection to communicate with her. I would have loved to be there to see if I saw her leave the body, or it just so happened. I mean, it's weird, but I'm always either in a different country or at the other end of this country when someone dies. So I've never been at someone's bedside when they were dying.
I have lots. Mm-hmm.
But I haven't, right? So this would have been
don't experience something. Usually what it is, I'm going to say this with no disrespect to anybody, because we just lost a neighbor that was like family in December. And I wasn't there when she passed. It was right after, but I really supported her sister a lot. And it's exactly what happens if somebody is palliative and you're waiting for them to leave this earth. It's terrible because you did. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but there's a type of breathing called chain stoking, where someone will take a big gasp and then there's nothing for a minute, and you're like literally hanging on that person's breath. So I can tell you, there's not a bunch of incredible things that happen when someone passes. Get down, doggy. But I can tell you the beautiful look of peace when they do leave is, if you could call it that, because they're no longer in pain. But I've been there at many, many deaths, but you don't always witness this. That's why I'm sharing these stories, because they're not the norm.
Yeah. But you know, like that for 1 week, you know, these weird breaths, like, and she wasn't hooked to machines. She wasn't, you know, so there was no monitors. It was just, we were just waiting, right? 8 days of waiting. So it was heart-wrenching and emotionally like a real roller coaster, because like, and then you're like, is this it?
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
Like, this is like, and then she takes another breath and you're like, oh, and she went through these moments, and you know that I'm sure everybody heard the saying, you can live 30 days without food, but you can't live past 3 days without water. Mm-hmm. Well, she was 8 days without food or water. So,
and it's the kindest thing you can do. I've gone through this with palliative care, because I see that you had mentioned the death rattle, Mish. I would never call it that. I know you might have heard it that. That's when you have a lot of fluid. Like, I know working in palliative care, I've had to talk to families, especially where the culture where food is love, and their family member is in a coma and they're not eating, and that's their biggest concern. That's the most unkind thing we could do to someone, to give them fluid, because their body can't process it. So that's where you get something like what Mish had shared here. So yes, the body can go on forever. I've had this conversation as well with a friend of mine whose beloved uncle, that was like a father, was on a ventilator through life. They'd had a very severe spinal injury and he was near the end of life, and they had suggested maybe I hate when they say pull the plug. That's a terrible thing. You don't pull the plug, but he was extubated. And she had asked, well, how long will it be? And he said, probably not more than a few minutes. Well, our uncle hung on. And she had asked me about this. And I said, sweetie, that's just a guess. That's between your uncle and the creator. And when he is leaving, I get the feeling he's waiting for someone. And he's waiting to say goodbye to a relative who was coming. So it's the best guesstimate a medical professional is going to give you. But I always say to people, that's between the soul and source, or soul and God, whatever the belief system is. Yeah. So go ahead.
For my auntie, you know, because she was hanging on, right, past the 4th and the 5th day. So the fifth or 6th day, that's when I asked my student to come and help me. And, you know, we asked the questions. We're like, so she's like, well, you want to get rid of
what was going on?
So she wasn't told what was going on. She's like, oh, okay. And then we're like, so what are you waiting for? What can we do to facilitate this? Because, you know, it must be uncomfortable for her. You know, we're trying to make this experience as pleasant and as simple and graceful as we can.
With dignity. Yeah.
With dignity. Yeah. And so she's like, well, I'm waiting for God to come and get me. Now, she was a very Christian person. So she prayed every day. She couldn't go to the mass on Sundays, but she watched it on TV, right? This for her was very important. And so we're trying to explain to her, that's not how it works. She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's not, he cannot come and get you because you have free will. So, and she was very stubborn. So I said, as long as you keep saying, he will come here and pick me up and bring me to heaven. That's not going to happen. But I said, do you see this hand that's extended to you? She's like, yeah, this bright bluish white hand. I'm like, right. Grab the hand. Just grab the hand. It's right there. All you got to do is just grab it. And that means I will go with you. You need to make that decision.
You have to make the decision. He's not going to make it for you.
No. So I said, when you're ready, grab that hand and he'll take you. He'll take you there. But he cannot rip you out. You can live in this state for a very, very long time because you're obstinate and you want it to happen a certain way. That's it.
But how beautiful that you were able to facilitate that conversation. There could be a lot of people that have not been able and wondering, why is someone hanging on? I usually get that question many, 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 many times. You've just given me another perspective to tuck into my toolbox. Not that I would ever tell your story, but that is very intriguing to think about, that that's what she was thinking. Yeah. That's powerful, Sonya.
Well, and by the way, did you know there's a special name for that, to help people on their deathbed to go into the light? It's called a psychotrump.
A what?
A psychotrump.
No, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, me neither. I just learned that term recently. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I'm just in my line of work. It was just I'm just a soul passer. I didn't realize there was a specific name for it. It's so PSYCHOTROMPH.
Oh, I've heard of that term before, but I just didn't know, I guess, what it was.
Yeah. So it's basically communicating with the dying who can no longer communicate, and allowing them to let go of their fears. And I, because we were there for a long time, everybody that came to visit her, I said to them, you will talk to her about what you remember, the positive experience you had. How did she enhance your life? How did she make your life better? And we were doing this because we're trying to get her to focus on the positive and not leave on her deathbed with a negative idea. In one of my past life, I worried about my family, and I came back right away, and I was tried as a witch, and this is what I feared for my family. So, I just wanted her to leave and realize her life was worthy. She had a great influence. She had made life and the world better by her presence. And so I was monitoring, I guess you could say, or encouraging people to stay on that, not start talking above the bed to each other, and ignore the fact that you're here to visit her. So you should be addressing her. You should be talking to her. You should be, right? So I guess I'm glad I was there for that. So I was able to direct this conversation to keep her included because she can hear.
Right? What I used to encourage people, families and friends that were there, was to let them know it's okay to go. We're going to be okay. The other thing that I'm writing about in this book is something I call the gift. And not everybody gets it. And it doesn't mean that there was something wrong that you didn't get this quote unquote gift. And what it is when somebody is comatose, they're going to leave, and you may get it for a minute. You may get it. One time I had it for about 8 hours with one patient. They hadn't eaten, hadn't drank, there's physical signs like they weren't going to be with us much longer. And they woke up while I was there. And they literally were like they were in life before they got sick, and they were talking and started to have something to eat, and the family was very religious and had believed that there was a miraculous healing from God. So that call was a long call out in the community to be handled very sensitively and lovingly. Now, this gentleman passed away, I think, the next day, but was able to explain. And I still remember, this is many years ago. So many of my patients, they stay with you, right? They just had such a profound, effect on your own life. And to be able to walk past that fact that, yes, miracles do happen. And this is a miracle in a way that you are having this time and experience to say what needs to be said, to whatever it may be. And it doesn't always happen. but it's a really difficult situation, especially as a healthcare provider or a death doula or somebody, if this does happen. And like I said, I remember this family very particularly because they were devout Christians, and they believed that their loved one had been healed. Right. So sometimes these things happen. Not every death happens the same. Not every experience happens the same. But I'm hoping by sharing these stories,
Yes.
it can maybe provide some clarity for people. But I think that's important. Like that you said, not speaking over your aunt. Mind you, she might have really enjoyed that. You don't know. You would have known your aunt best, because I know with speaking to people on the other side, sometimes the family was there, and they were bickering or whatever they were doing, right? Like normal family little squabbles. And the loved one will talk about it afterwards, that they really felt like it was just normal, because that would have been normal how they would have been if they weren't sick.
Yeah. In her case, she actually felt ignored.
You would have known best.
So knowing her, I know that she would be more pissed off. Like, okay, so you're here, and I'm invisible.
You were her
voice.
voice.
You hear that, right? So so I tried to make it about her and make her realize, and we did that. We kept saying to her, you can go. You'd be better off. You'll see your mom again. But that's when she thought you're trying to get rid of me. And we were like, no, there's no way back now. But that's when we realized, okay, so we didn't explain that to her.
So Connie Martin says that happened to my dad. He got one day full of energy and died days later. Yes, so sometimes it happens. And when I say this to people and the way I'm writing it in the book, I don't want anybody reading that book to think that, well, why didn't we get that? It may not have been needed in the situation, but for whatever reason, sometimes this can happen and we see it, right? And like I say, that's the biggest thing about death, and why I think it's so important to talk about it is because it's not talked about enough. There was this great series that was out probably about 10 years ago now by the UK, and they only had a couple episodes. I wish they would have kept it up, but they were normalizing the topic of death. Like the one episode in particular, they went into the Irish wake and how powerful that was and why it was so important, right? It was a party. It was a celebration.
And we've lost ritual. We've lost ritual to go from a child to an adult. We've lost ritual on how you're important, you fit in this community. We've lost ritual. We've people, I don't need to get married anymore. No, because marriage became more about a party and a financial obstruction. And, my son says, if I have choice between buying a house and getting married, I'm buying a house, And so don't be upset we're not getting married. I'm not upset. But it's sad that you're linking that this ritual has to be this expensive when it's about this promise. It's about this. It's not just a piece of paper. If you think that, it's only a piece of paper, it's because you're missing the whole point of you coming before a community and saying, we're going to be making our lives together. So support us in that and encourage us in building our family and staying together. And we've lost the ritual of death. That is so much about again. It's an industry. It's money.
Plus, people are afraid because they don't know what to expect. Right? Again, you get back to that fear, and I have run into earthbound spirits for many reasons, as many. I know, Mish, you'd asked about an attachment. We've got a few minutes. If you can clarify what you mean by that. I think because Sonya had addressed you in the comments here. You said, what about attachments when we pass? So if you can clarify that a little bit, what you mean. And you also said maybe they worked out music and dance with raising our vibrations. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I forget where I was going with this now. What was I just saying before I read that? It'll come back to you.
There's no conversation.
Why people stay. Yeah, so I have run into spirits that have stayed, some because they pass so quickly they don't even realize they passed. I have run into others that revenge, anger, religious dogma. They're very afraid of what awaits them on the other side for maybe terrible things they feel that they have done. I have met others that have just stayed because they love their house and nobody else is going to get it. I'm going to keep it. I mean, there's been so many reasons why. So there's many reasons. We have free will.
Yeah. See, I'm trying to. Mish is Mish
Well, we
says
got to
when
read
we
her
pass away,
question. We got to
we
read
have
her question.
attachment. But
Okay,
you know, that's what I'm asking. You know, are we talking about a house? Are you attached to the house? The house is yours. This is where you.
well, I think she's talking about when you had said about you're a female and you have the guardian angel. Maybe is when you had said, I don't know. I could be wrong.
That's why, Mish. Can you just clarify it for us? Not knowing you pass scares the crowd out of me. Well, it usually happens in very violent incidents, like a car crash, or you know, usually that's when there's not that many out there that don't know they died. And most of it is the ones that I've encountered, they were all soldiers.
I've run into I know out at a place that I visit quite frequently. It was out in the wilderness, and there was a spirit out there, that female girl that had been missing, and the person that connected with them didn't know they'd been missing. They had no idea they had passed away. So sometimes you run into people like that there, and there's people that stay because you have free will in death, just as you do in life. So what Michelle's talking about, it's okay, Mish. So what she's clarifying about the attachment, I'm reading it out loud just because there's 80% of people listening, it's audio only, so I have no clue what we're talking about. So when she's talking about an attachment, what happens to a negative attachment? I have a theory about it, but what do you think? What do you think?
So when we talk about negative attachment, is it like you were saying, like you want revenge because someone killed you, or you are angry because you died and you were too young? Is those the kind of attachments?
I'm thinking she's talking about, and I've seen this, where say you have somebody that's an alcoholic, and you have a spirit, somebody that's passed away, has chosen not to cross over, but because they can no longer physically drink the alcohol anymore, they were an alcoholic or a drug user, they attach to somebody that has that issue in life here. Yes. And then when that person passes away, what happens to that attachment?
They'll go find someone else that still has a body.
That's exactly what they do.
I'm glad that we both agree on these things without having
100%. And as I was saying, I started to say this earlier, when Dave and I don't always agree, but it makes for a good discussion, because I always say to people, you don't have to believe us. You take what resonates, leave the rest, and do your own research. Exactly. But what I said, everything is energy, and our words, our thoughts, and our emotions are the most powerful forms of energy. You can, they're not everybody's running around thinking love and light all the time. There's some pretty negative, dark people, unfortunately, on this planet. That's energy. Where does it go? Then we get into the discussion of tulpas, right? And things like this that can take an actual form, or like what you ran into in that home. Where does it come from? We don't even have enough time to get into all this stuff, but I'd love to talk more. Well, you're going to come back on anyways. You're booked for the whole year, a couple times more. So,
but yeah, the idea is that these spirits, who are usually alcohol and drugs and even gluttony, actually that fits under gluttony. Not knowing when you have enough, because there's nothing wrong. I don't drink personally, but there's nothing wrong with having a glass of wine. But it's when you fall into, passing out and blacking out and those things, you're just having too much. You can't control. You're insatiable. And they could, because they don't have a physical body, they will attach themselves to alcoholics and drug addicts. And so when people's personality change, it's because it's not their personality. There's someone else is acting through this body, because the person is impaired and is halfway there, and so the other entity can enter their body. But Mish said no, so I think that's not what they meant.
Well, you'll have to save it. When you're coming back on in the summertime sometime, eh?
Well, I'm leaving for Japan in May and South Korea.
Oh my God, I haven't talked to you. You know you're going away, because Connie says we need another night. She's coming back on, you guys. I booked her for the whole year a couple of times. She's coming back on.
I come about 4 times a year, so that you don't have too much of me, but still enough that we answer.
But enough and that's what we haven't really gone down this road talking about this stuff. And I don't think there's anything wrong with working in the light about talking about this other side.
Absolutely not. It's part of the process. So
Yeah.
I think it's completely normal. But yeah, so we finally breached in Asia. So we're going for work in Asia for a month in May.
Yay.
But before I leave on April 26th, 27, I am teaching a weekend of Akashic Records. So if anybody's interested.
Oh, cool.
Then we're also taking off to Sedona, Arizona, and Mount Shasta, California in July.
Uh-huh.
So
You're going to be all over the place.
Yeah, we're very busy.
So what are you going to tell you guys? Don't go anywhere, because Dolly Saffron and Preston Dennett are coming up next with the Light Gate at 8:00. Also, Sonya's coming on. We have her booked already. June 30th, the Monday, and then in September again, she's coming back on, you guys. So she will be here. Oh, Mish says April 1st here, and they stole the moon. Apparently, I'm going to have to hear more. You got to bring that on Thursday night. Tell us all about that, Mish. Anyways, where can we get a hold of you, Sonya?
The easiest way, go to my website, www.sonyaroy, Sonya, SONYAROY.com. From there, yeah, exactly. Because from there, you can choose Facebook, YouTube, Messenger, email, phone, contact sheet. It's all there. So like Mish, if I didn't answer your question and this is important to you and we are running out of time here, just send me a message and then I'll clarify over, what is it that you're asking? Because I don't want you to stay in a place where you don't have answers. I can answer you, but I need to answer the questions properly. So there's many ways to contact me. So you just pick whatever works best for you.
She can even message me too, and I'll connect you guys. So everybody's saying what a great show. I'm glad you guys enjoyed it. If you ever want to get a hold of me at the moment, it's facebook.com/Angel Rock. I am working on my first course, which Leanne Clark and I call her the Crystal Wizardress. You can find her under the Crystal Architect on Facebook and YouTube. We are going to be setting it up. Looks like it's probably going to be June or July. If I can get healthy here, we can sit down, get some work done. We got started, but we got a lot of work still to do. When I do have that up, I'm hoping to go to a domain name website. Don't forget, I have 2 groups on Facebook: Paranormal University for all things paranormal, the Angel Rocker Tribe for more things spiritual. Varla Ventura is coming on next week, you guys, and she has her new book. I have it. It's all about plant medicine and all the history behind plants and stuff. It's gorgeous. I'll try and remember to go out for Thursday night to show you guys. So otherwise, I will be back Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Thing at the Foot of Bed with Dave. Don't forget about our group under the same name. We'd love to have you join it. Thank you again, Sonya. Stay tuned, everybody. Love y'all. We'll see you Thursday and next Monday again.
See you again.